Welcome to the show. This is The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zammit, or the other way around, whatever you like. Let's get on with the show with the news, views, reviews, and interviews. Well, first bit of news. When I say no news is good news, I do mean that. But we have a little bit of news on Starfighter. Nothing massive. But apparently, and I say the word apparently, circled, underlined, fluorescent, highlighted. Apparently, the third act in Starfighter, Star Wars Starfighter, which is coming out in 2027, the third act, the conclusion to the film, is being redone as we speak, or being redone. Whatever that means is whatever that means. Reshoots are reshoots, people throwing around ideas on their own creative process. Well, this is just a reshoot. Whether it's a complete different ending because they were not confident with it, whatever, it's a creative decision. But that's what's happening with Starfighter. That is some news. Starfighter, the big movie, technically the biggest movie for Star Wars to come out in a couple of years' time. Mando is coming out next year, but I think Starfighter is the one that is going to be really pushed as the next big film. Anyway, to more news, and this is just me scouring the internet, from other sources. They will remain nameless due to being fair to all, but unfortunately, a magazine that I never actually bought, but I always used to see, and I did dive into it a little, but I didn't really get into it. What am I talking about? Star Wars Insider has finally come to an end, and it is come to the reason of the digital, space has really taken over the whole world. Magazines, not just Star Wars Insider, they're dying. It's a known thing. Even newspapers, it's dying. The internet is the pretty much main or only source of getting news. Even YouTube channels. So Star Wars Insider is come to an end. Save those copies though. If you've got some Star Wars Insider, they are going to increase in value. That's my thought of the day. To more news, and again, the scale on the internet just recently, without naming people for the sake of being fair to all, but one of the main witch in the Witches of Dathomir, which is a part of the Ahsoka series, essentially, but is a group of made up characters in Star Wars universe that appeared in Ahsoka season 1, that will appear in season 2 of Ahsoka. The main witch, Claudia Black was her acting name, will not be reprising her role due to budget reasons, which is a little bit unusual with Star Wars at the moment, because my next piece of news is going to blow it out the water. But they could not pay her the amount of money that was required. This is apparently she was not paid the amount of money that was requiring her to leave her home with her kids and go to London and get this done for Ahsoka. So, so she won't be reappearing. But the type of alien, I hate to say this, the alien or witch, you could easily recast. I think, saving the role for the actual person who initiated it is important. But, this is the type of character that no one really knows about besides hardcore Star Wars fans or general Star Wars fans. I don't think the general public will know who this is. And, so basically, sorry, it's really annoying, this morning hairdo here. So she won't be reprising her role. Claudia Black, that appeared in season 1 of Ahsoka, will not appear in season 2. The next and final piece of news is that Andor the series And I don't know if this is American or I'd say this is American, obviously coming from America, Star Wars is, but in American, that's $700 million it took to budget the whole Andor series. 700 million. To give you a perspective in Australian, that would be almost, I'd say 1.2 billion, if because you need to double it almost for Australian. The Australian dollar is shocking. It's always been shocking. $1.3 billion. But let's talk in the actual American dollar. More than $700 million it took to create Andor. That's a lot of money. That's making news this week, really, in Star Wars. Let's get now into Views. Views is my story idea. I accept the story for what it is, from the start to finish, wherever it goes, because you know what? Star Wars has a journey. That's why I enjoy it. Yes, it's become weakened. Yes, in parts it's become strengthened. But you know what? It's the Star Wars story. My story idea is not what I prefer to see. It's just something that I don't know. It's in my head. So let's talk about a story idea that needs to fruition without actually having a story idea. What am I saying? I think it's really, really important when creating actual Star Wars stories for the actual Star Wars brand, is not to say it's a Star Wars release, for two main reasons. One, you are going to be overcharged. This was known and utilized way back in the 80s. George Lucas called his productions different names so he wouldn't be ripped off, because everyone know it would be Star Wars. Well, I think this should still happen. I don't know if it's not happening, but this is an essential area, because, to be overcharged just because you're Star Wars, or just because you're Marvel, or just because you're rich, it's just going to happen. And it's going to cause you a slowing down or a halt in your production. So to create a story idea, this is a funny type of story idea this time, I just think rename it and heavily cover up what it is. The other reason why I suggest not to say you're doing a Star Wars story is because I'm a person, I create music, or I create whatever it is, even this. I do it in the privacy because I don't want outside influences to be a part of something that I'm just doing myself. If I invite a person into the studio, this here, or if I do something with music and I invite someone, then we can be part of the creative process. But to explain to people about how you create, could just dampen people's ideas in how they seriously take you on. To be a music producer, for example, you can be hands-on with the actual equipment, or you don't have to be hands-on with the actual equipment. And I'm talking, computerized type of music. But, so that could be a dividing point. So I just think, the story idea here is really cover up your story ideas, even if it's fan films. Say nothing. Say nothing. Just go at it yourself. Inject into the project what you want it to be like. And that is your story. A Star Wars story. Anyway, so that's my views for this time around, which is sort of more of a opinion rather than a story idea, but it is sort of connecting to the story ideas for all of us. Anyway, let's get into now reviews. Because we are now approaching the month of December, and really this is the 10th anniversary month for The Force Awakens Episode 7, The Phenomenon. It was just crazy. the excitement, oh my goodness, it was great. I got the hands on my and the Blu. This is just I've shown you the 3D one before, but this is the regular Blu-ray steel book Force Awakens. I love this artwork because of the sheer simplicity. Look at that. That's the cover. That's all it is. It's Kylo Ren. That's it. And the other side was, one of the big push of a character, which was Captain Phasma. Not really much happened to her, and it is a her. Unfortunately, because, it was a great sort of idea that just fizzled by the next film, but that's another story. But look at this, beautiful, the steel book Blu-ray special edition. Look at that, beautiful. I love this. All the steelbook covers, I'll tell you this, with Star Wars, especially obviously the 7, 8, 9, were just great. They were so simple. But this is probably, of all of them, the best one, because the other ones sort of were not as simple, iconic as this. The other ones were good, but this one, The Force Awakens Blu-ray special edition, not 3D, just regular Blu-ray release steelbook. This is a 10, just because of the artwork. I love it. That's my review, and again, I don't have everything about the stuff here, as you can see, is not a 10, I'll tell you that, but I do cherish them for whatever reason. So let's now get into interviews. Interviews this time around and let me just rock some. Love that coffee in the morning. Woo! We've had some interesting activity, I tell you. Michael from Werribee South usually is the one that brings in the questions. Not because I want him to, it's just because he loves to. He's a friend of mine, but he's even had interaction. This is a first. Amazing. This is great. Whether, so let me just get into the interviews here. So the first question was, what was Yoda's name in the early outlines for The Empire Strikes Back? There was no answers from other people with this one, but I can tell you that and I had to look this up because I didn't even know, let me tell you. But it was Minch Yoda. He initially was known as Minch in this, just as a quick way of mentioning who this person, but then it eventually just got to Yoda. So Minch Yoda was the actual first initial name for Yoda, and it just became Yoda. The second question Michael asked, now this is where the bit of activity happens, but anyway, which Star Wars film received a nomination for the best visual effects at the 91st Academy Awards? I'll tell you the answers to other people. Now, it is Desert Coliseum gave an answer to Michael here, or for the channel, and said Back to the Future 3. That could be sort of a funny reaction, that could be a real reaction, whatever it is, but that was that person's answer. Well, the actual answer was, I was a bit surprised with this. I tried to guess this, and I thought it was going to be Revenge of the Sith, episode 3. But it was actually Solo, a Star Wars story. Solo, a Star Wars story, received a nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 91st Academy Awards. Okay, so that was that question. The next question from Michael from Werribee South. Werribee South is a part of Melbourne, Australia. It's on the other side. Let's keep the people from Werribee South that side, or that side, which way you're looking. But anyway, no. So the next question was, who is credited as playing himself in the Phantom Menace credits? Well, Michael or the channel got an answer from another person, And it was the same person. It was Desert Coliseum. And, this could be another funny, I don't know, or it could be real. I don't know. But let's just take it for what it is. Desert Coliseum has responded, said George Pupus. Well, actually, the credited playing himself in the Phantom Menace was Jabba. Jabba the Hutt. It was Jabba by Jabba. Sort of makes sense because it's CGI, and that's it. Whatever words were uttered was very minimal. Whether that's worth crediting, I would love to be credited as that. Be great. Just a word in Star Wars or a snippet, a second in the background. I'd love to be a part of it. But anyway, that's another thing. So that's the answer to the actual answer was Jabba the Hutt, and Desert Coliseum answered George Pupus. Wrong. Not to make you wrong, but that was not the right answer. So the next question from Michael from Werribee South says, which 90s boy band was originally supposed to appear in the Attack of the Clones? Thank God they were dropped from the actual editing process. Thank God. Nothing against this band, but I just don't think this would have worked. And I'll tell you something else in one moment with another band. It was NSYNC, but the answer, I don't know if this is an actual, from Desert Coliseum, was fake news. And there was also another answer by Chris Canny 8872. That's Chris Canny 8872. I think that's how you pronounce it. He said Backstreet Boys, which is a good guess, but it was NSYNC. But I'll also add that in the initial talks, way back in 96, 97, there was a group called Sneaker Pimps. Sneaker Pimps were going to be a part of a soundtrack of pop music artists for Star Wars. They were going to develop a pop music Star Wars album for the release of, the prequels, especially Phantom Menace. And Sneaker Pimps was going to be one of the acts. Now, if you don't know who Sneaker Pimps were, they had a sort of a one-hit wonder, very cool song, beautiful mellow type beats. It was called Six Underground. Look them up. Sneaker Pimps, Six Underground, very good song. You sort of can see how they would work. So I'm bloody crazy with this today. But yeah, so it was sort of good that they didn't eventuate, because I think a pop music album for Star Wars would have made it a bit too blatant. But anyway, that's my opinion. I think sticking to just the regular orchestral soundtrack is great, beautiful enough as it is. Nothing against Sneaker Pimps, nothing really against NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys. But anyway, the answer to the question from Michael was actually NSYNC. And thanks to the other commenters as well. The next question, Michael from Werribee South says, who issues Order 66 in Revenge of the Sith? God, this is so easy. It's just, it's Emperor Palpatine. And actually, Chris Canny 8872 answered the same question to Michael or to me or whoever it is, and he got the right answer. That's it. Emperor Palpatine. He ordered it. It's very clear and simple towards the end of the film of Revenge of the Sith in Episode 3. Iconic moment. In fact, I say it as an everyday comment sometimes, just as a passing by sort of thing. Execute Order 66. It's a bit of comic relief during one's daily routine. So the next... Oh, so there's also another... There was a comment. The next was a comment. So my last episode of the actual Force Always was Star Wars could be cancelled. And LOZ175, that's LOZ175, pretty much responded, just cancel it. YouTube channels do way better than Disney ever could. I get your whole your whole answer here. I feel this as well. You know, but I'm just a lover of Star Wars. I'm a lover of movies, and I just think creativity is endless, and I think you just could create and create and create. There's always going to be highs and lows, even what you've created. As George Lucas once said, when you create something, you've got to abandon that project to leave it as it is, because you could just keep adding and subtracting from it forever. It's just a part of creativity. But I do get what LOZ175 is saying, just cancel. I get his feeling or what his comments are saying, but I will say that, just keep rocking. I just, create. It's the playground. It's great. Anyway, but thank you very much, I think I'm saying it right. LOZ175. Their next question: which fanatical Star Wars vehicle was mistaken for a military tank in the Libyan government during the production of A New Hope? God, this makes me laugh. I swear, it makes me laugh because I tell you, I know, having a Maltese connection, you got Malta, and the next lowest point is the top of Africa, and I think that's the closest is the Libyan area, and I actually landed in there one time mistakenly by the on return home back to Australia, and seeing the family in Malta, and boy, it was just, I thought, thoughts were just running big time in my head. I'm actually in Libya. I just, nothing against Libyan people, but my goodness, the idea was just, woo! Anyway, what was mistaken now? Desert Coliseum, fart wing. Obviously, this is, a bit of comedy. And thanks for the comedy, Desert Coliseum. Fart wing was his response. Another response by Chris Canny, A872, was Millennium Falcon, which I thought would have been too. But it does make sense when you hear what it actually was. It was the Jawa rolling machine on the desert. That was mistaken as a military tank, and I sort of get that. See, the Millennium Falcon, is a great thought, and I thought that too. But I actually had to look that up. It's the type of question you got to look that up. I mean, who knows about this? It was never, legendary thought, just fact in Star Wars. But the Millennium Falcon looks like a UFO in a sort of in a roundabout way, where the Jawa tank looks like a tank. Looks like it could be something human in an unusual way, but still it looks more realistic to what a tank would be than the Millennium Falcon. So it was the Jawa rolling tank that picked up droids in the Tatooine desert at that time, and that was it. So the next one was a comment. So it's from Metal Mover. He said he was born in he or she, born in 1974, grew up loving Star Wars as did everyone else. They ruined it, don't care, no more, in fact, hate it. That's his comment. It's fair to say. That's from Metal Mover. Next question was again from Michael from Werribee South, and it was: George Lucas initially developed Star Wars because he couldn't secure the rights for which comic book character. Well, this is I'll answer it at the end, but the answers here by Desert Coliseum was Seth Putnam. I think that's how you pronounce it. Whether that's funny or a real answer, I'm unsure, but it was Seth Putnam by Desert Coliseum. The other answer was Chris Kenny, 8872. He said Flash Gordon. And that is the right answer, Flash Gordon. So many documentaries that, if you're going to look back in Star Wars, I think every single one will have George Lucas or someone talk about that it was based on a Flash Gordon serial. And that's it. Anyway, the show's been a bit longer today with the fantastic, comments. Please add in your comments or your questions, and please like if you like this channel. Subscribe if you like, whatever you want. You'll be treated equal. Anyway, until next time, my friends, keep rocking.